This is a special report from ABC News. The Thomas hearing. Now reporting from ABC News World Headquarters, Peter Jennings.
Good morning. Today in Washington, the Senate Judiciary Committee is going to begin by questioning again Judge Clarence Thomas, President Bush's nominee to the Supreme Court. If you were with us last night, you know that Judge Thomas forcefully rejected all of the suggestions, all of the charges of sexual harassment made against him by Professor Anita Hill. A word to boys and girls who may be in front of the television set at the moment. We parents know this is usually your time of day. But what is going on in Washington is going to end up in the history books someday. So let me try to explain a little bit for those of you who are little. We have been watching a woman who's a lawyer and a professor and a man who's a judge have a very painful disagreement about something the woman says the man did to her when they were working together. Though he never touched her, she says he said many things to her which were mean and disgusting, which made her feel threatened and really bad. You can ask your parents to tell you more, but the thing is, he says he didn't do any of them. Now, this would be important at any time, but because the man, Judge Thomas, may one day be a member of the Supreme Court, which, as you may know, is the most important court in all the land, the senators in Washington, the politicians elected by your parents, really want to get to the bottom of this. And there in that Senate caucus room, that meeting room, is where they're going to meet today. All 14 of them on that table there in the front are going to talk to Judge Thomas and then to some of the witnesses who support Judge Thomas's point of view and also support Professor Hill's point of view. The senators are the ones who are going to decide whether the judge or the professor, Anita Hill, is telling the truth. That's Senator Kennedy there and Senator Metzenbaum. Now think how awful it would be if those senators made the wrong decision and the Supreme Court had a man on it who'd been mean to a woman and lied about it and was going to make a lot of decisions about the way other women are treated. Think how awful it would be if the professor were not telling the truth and senators believed her and told the judge he couldn't sit on the court. By the way, you may hear some not very nice language today, but if you stay with us, it's important and you'll remember it all someday. Now, on Capitol Hill this morning is ABC's Jim Wooten, who's our Capitol Hill correspondent, who's been covering these very carefully. He's the Democrat. There are more Democrats on the committee than there are Republicans. And if you take another look at the committee room, you can see how it gets divided.
Professor Hill's testimony. Obviously under no requirement to do so, but I wonder if since then you've had either an opportunity to read or be briefed about what she said.
Senator, prior to coming here last night, I was briefed about much of what she said, and of course, my wife watched significant portions of it and talked about some of the things that she had to say.
The reason I asked you may have followed a part of the testimony where she spoke about going to dinner with you at the time when she rather was leaving the EOC. Are you familiar with that part of her testimony?
Senator, I am familiar that she said that. I didn't see it. I was briefed that she said that.
Was there such a dinner?
Senator, I do not recall such a dinner. It was not unusual for me when a staffer was leaving to go to lunch or to dinner would be more unusual, but not out of the question. But it was not unusual to take them out and just simply say thank you. In later years, I know we had much bigger dinners. We'd have many members of the staff go out and be a cause for great celebration. But I don't specifically recall such a dinner.
Do you recall at any time ever taking Professor Hill out to dinner?
No, Senator.
Now, Judge, when in her testimony, in which she speaks of this dinner, she said that you had driven her to the restaurant. She did not recall the restaurant to there for a period of time. You've heard, I'm sure, the conversation that she recounts has taken place. And then after you left and went on wherever you did, she took the subway home, again, according to her testimony. she said that the two of you went there in your car. You were assigned, I believe, a car and driver in your position. If that was so, would there be a log that the driver keeps of where he might drive you?
No, Senator, we did not keep logs. I used my driver more frequently in the early years and less frequently in my later years at EEOC, but we didn't have logs.
Even though if drivers work late, they get paid overtime, they don't keep logs of where they go?
Senator, my driver at that time worked with me late. He was on my personal staff. I don't think the driver today is on the personal staff. But the driver at EEOC was assigned to the chairman's office when I went on board and would still have been assigned to the chairman's office.
At the time that Professor Hill was talking about, just at the time when she was leaving the office, who would have been the driver?
Mr. Randall, James Randall, who's since retired.
Mr. James Randall?
Randall.
I'm sorry. Between the sound of the cameras clicking, Judge, and I still didn't hear the last name.
Mr. James Randall.
Randall. Thank you. But the bottom line is that, let me make sure I understand this. Professor Hill said the two of you went out to dinner as she was leaving. Professor Hill, of course, further alleges, and this would be a major and explosive matter, that you said something to her to the effect, if you ever tell about this, it will damage or destroy my career. Now, that was her statement. I want you to have a chance to give yours. Am I correct in understanding your testimony now that, one, you have no recollection of ever having such a conversation at any time? Is that correct?
No, I have no recollection of having dinner with her as she left, although I do not think that it would be unusual for me to have gone either to lunch or to particularly an early dinner with a member of my staff who was leaving. I would categorically deny that under any circumstances, whether it's breakfast, lunch, or dinner, that I made those statements.
So then it would be safe to say your testimony is anytime, whether in a social, business, or any other setting, you never made the statement, if this comes out, it ruined my career, or anything even relating to that kind of a statement. Is that correct?
That's right.
Thank you. Now, I just want to make sure I understand this. We'll move on to another subject, but do you recollect ever going to dinner with Professor Hill? I understand you're saying it would not be unusual to go with a member of staff, but do you ever recollect going to dinner with her at all?
I don't recall, other than the once, I believe, we had dinner perhaps with Charles Cothe in Oklahoma subsequent to her leaving EEOC. I don't recall ever having gone to dinner with Professor Hill.
No, I understand that, and you have stated that before, but I'm just talking about the time when she was working there. You do not have any such?
No, I do not recall. Let me add one thing, Senator.
Certainly.
I occasionally, with my personal staff as well as with my clerks now, when I am going out to lunch, I will grab the first person available and say, is anybody ready for lunch? And walk out to either a local place or perhaps just a deli to grab a sandwich. That is customary with me. So that I don't want to suggest that there wasn't an occasion when I would do something like that.
Judge Thomas, if there wasn't, I can't imagine a member of the Senate who doesn't do the same thing and say to some of his staff, let's grab a sandwich, let's grab lunch, something like that, and continue discussion of whatever might be going on. That's, I don't think you speak to something unusual, nor do you suggest you do. Tell me, Judge, you said yesterday that there were a couple of occasions when you would go by Professor Hill's apartment. Probably have a beer, continued discussions. You recall, I forgot which senator you would respond.
No, that isn't the way I said it, Senator. What I said
would you restate it the way
what
you
I said was, when we were at the Department of Education, there were, as I recall, a number of instances in which I gave her a ride home. And she asked me just to drop in or to continue discussion, and I would have a Coke or a beer or something and leave. That was, again, nothing. I thought nothing of it. It was purely innocent on my part, and nothing occurred with respect to that, other than those conversations.
I'm not suggesting by the question there was anything that was not. I just wanted to make sure I understand this. That was only when you were at the Department of Education, is that correct?
Yes, that's the reason I recall that is because I lived in Southwest, and for a significant part of her tenure at EEOC, I did not have a personal car. And she lived nearby on Capitol Hill. The Switzer building is in Southwest, and I would just simply give her a ride to the other side of the hill.
Do you realize? Do you recall whereabouts on the hill she?
No, I do not.
Do you recall anything at all about the apartment? A big, little?
Oh, it was.
Old, new?
She had a roommate, of course, and the area was that I remember was just a small living room type area where there was a TV and I think a small couch or something.
Do you remember whether it was an old building, new building?
I remember it as an old building or an older building, and a duplex. For some reason, a duplex sticks in my mind.
Now, Judge, you have spoken eloquently in the past of the kind of racial harassment and racial discrimination you faced growing up. A lesson perhaps for everybody, when realizing that these are not some ancient things with a man your age is speaking within a generation of it. Let me talk to you about, since you've been in the workforce about 20 years since leaving law school, have you ever witnessed sexual harassment firsthand?
Senator, I have witnessed incidents that I would consider sexual harassment and inappropriate conduct. And as chairman of EEOC, particularly in the workforce there, I was adamant that this conduct would not take place. And anyone who's worked with me understands that. I was adamant that it would not take place.
And in that being adamant, how did you translate that to staff or people who work for you, or in statements, speeches, memos, personal? I mean, how would you do it, Judge?
If you engage in it, you will be fired. Simple.
It's the easiest way to have it.
If you engage in it, you will be fired.
We have a similar rule in my office for drug abuse and sexual harassment. You do it, you're gone.
Anyone who, and you will have witnesses who've worked with me, you ask them what my statements were. It was very simple. That is particularly easy on a personal staff, and it is particularly easy with Schedule C appointees.
Now, Judge, you said you witnessed sexual harassment firsthand. What was the nature of, can you just give me some idea of the type that you've seen?
Well, the types of things are, again, people using graphic language to subordinates who are female or women. There would be individuals who would expect certain conduct on the part of women that they expect to stay in the workforce or to prosper. Those kinds of things I've seen either when I was not in the position to do anything about it, and I've heard about when I was in a position to do something about it. And in the latter instance, I did something about it.
Judge, it's probably a difficult thing to do here under the circumstances, but could you just step out of the role for a moment of being a Supreme Court nominee and think back to being head of the EEOC for a minute? you get a call from an investigator in a district office. Just had a woman come in with a claim of sexual harassment. Relays the claim to you, and you look at it and say, yeah, this is. It fits all fours within the regulation statutes. And he says, but, Mr. Chairman, it was 5 years ago. Statutes run. What would you say to him?
Senator, that is certainly something that never occurred during my tenure. There were instances in which there were older charges of that nature. What we would generally find would be that the person involved would have engaged in a pattern of that kind of practice. If that person is a manager that we're talking about, you could find a pattern, and you can find more recent occurrences. To my knowledge, and again, I could be, this may not always be the case, but when you have a person who's engaged in grotesque conduct or harassing conduct, you will find more than one person. If the person has the habit of harassing secretaries, you will find a series of secretaries. If the person has a habit of harassing professional subordinates or other employees, you will find a series of those. You will not find generally just one isolated instance, and I think that that would be the trigger to look for more instances of them.
Would it be unusual, though, to have the initial allegation be something that happened some time back? I understand what you're saying about the pattern that you didn't reconstruct later, but would it be unusual to have the initial allegation of sex harassment be of some time past?
To my knowledge, Senator, and based on just what I've seen personally, it would be unusual.
Thank you.
Usually what you would have is you would have a recent occurrence that would trigger an inquiry, and then you would look back and you would see a pattern.
Now, back on the charges that Professor Hill made yesterday, one was a discussion of pornographic films with her. She stated this happened on a number of occasions, and that she had found it uncomfortable and asked you not to. Let me ask you, and she's been asked whether this happened. Let me ask you, did you ever have a discussion of pornographic films with Professor Hill?
Absolutely not.
Ever had with any other women?
Senator, I will not get into any discussions that I might have about my personal life or my sex life with any person outside of the workplace.
I'm not asking.
I will categorically say I have not had any such discussions with Professor Hill.
Please don't misunderstand my question, Judge. I am confining it to the workplace. I have no interest in what may be your personal life in this. That's yours. What I'm asking is she alleges within the workplace. Make sure I fully understand. I'm asking you this question so that you can give the answer. Am I correct in understanding your answer? Within the workplace. Professor Hill, you never had such a discussion.
That's right.
You never had such discussions within the workplace with any other women.
That's right.
Or anyone, for that matter.
That's right.
Now, were you interviewed? Well, you were interviewed by the FBI. I mean, you talked about that. Were you interviewed on? There seems to be some confusion. It's on September 28th by the FBI.
I don't know which day, September. I was interviewed on Wednesday of, I believe, September 25th. I'm not sure.
I think we have some confusion. In your affidavit, it says, I told the Federal Bureau of Investigation on September 28, 1991.
Well,
I categorically deny it.
It's Wednesday.
Yeah, I've got the date of transcription, the FBI, it says 9/28/91. It was faxed on September 25th, 91, and I'm just wondering if we have whether in about 5 different places on here the FBI have made a typographical error and have their dates off by 3 days. It was on a Wednesday.
It was on Wednesday.
Okay. When you had that discussion with them, did they ever mention, or did you ever mention to them going to her apartment at any time, to Professor Hill's apartment any time?
I think I may have mentioned that I dropped her off at home, and I may have mentioned that I'd been in her apartment. I can't remember. I don't think they were focusing on that. I think they were focusing more on whether or not the allegations that she made.
I understand. You said yesterday in your statement that I cannot imagine anything that I said or did to Anita Hill that could have been mistaken for sexual harassment. But with that said, if there's anything that I have said that has been misconstrued by Anita Hill or anyone else to be sexual harassment, then I can say that I'm so very sorry. And I wish I had known. If I did know, I would have stopped immediately. And I would not, as I've done over the past 2 weeks, I'd tear away myself trying to think of what I could possibly have done, but I have not said or done the things that Anita Hill has alleged. I've heard people say, was there something further to that statement? I mean, can you think of anything? I mean, you say that if there was anything, then you're very sorry, but you're also saying you cannot think of anything that could have approached us. Is that correct?
That's right, Senator. I have agonized over this. This has not been an easy matter for me. And I don't know how or why she would say these things. I don't know what I could have done that would have resulted in this. And that is just to simply make that point, that if I did anything to anyone that would bring them to a point to suggest or to think that I engage in sexual harassment, then I am sorry, because it is certainly conduct that I would not approve and conduct that I would not engage in.
Well, let me follow up on that a bit. Did you search your mind for why I do this? Now, as I understand also your testimony, and I'm trying to give a summary, and please correct me if I'm inaccurate in the summary. You feel that you gave Professor Hill opportunities in government service, as you have others. Is that correct?
That's right.
And you have stated that you felt a particular responsibility, spoken really basically almost as family, the people that have worked for you in bringing them forward and giving them these opportunities. Is that correct?
Yes, Senator. It's in Professor Hill's case, and it's important to me that this be understood. I believe that when I have assistants or interns, that I have a personal responsibility for them. As teacher, advisor, not employer. I am the employer also, but they are my personal charges for whom I have responsibility. Anita Hill came to me through one of my dearest, dearest friends. He was the best man at my wedding. We were at Holy Cross College together. We were at Yale Law School together. We were the 2 slowest guys on the track team. We spent a lot of time together. We lived across the way from each other in law school. We lived together during the summer. When my marriage broke up, I slept at his apartment. This was my dearest friend. And when he brought her to my attention, it was a special responsibility that he asked me to take on. And I felt very strongly that I could discharge that in the way that I did, and that was to be careful about her career, to make sure she had opportunities, to be there to offer advice and counsel, and that's something that I continued with my other special assistants. They are family. My clerks are my family. They're my friends.
Well, then, having done all this for Professor Hill, and knowing now what she has said here and what you've read and hearing her statement under oath, explicit as it was, statement that you've adamantly, categorically denied, to use your term, why would she do this?
Senator, you know, I've asked myself that question, as I told you. I haven't slept very much in the last 2.5 weeks. I've thought unceasingly about this. And my wife simply said, stop torturing yourself. I don't know why family members turn on each other. I don't know why a son or a daughter or brother or sister would write some book that destroys a family. I don't know. All I can tell you is that from my standpoint, I felt that I did everything I could toward Professor Hill in the same way that I would do with my other special assistants to discharge my responsibilities. I don't know. I do not have the answer.
Have you had any conversation with her since this began? I mean, since these charges came out?
No, Senator.
No, I'm not trying to be facetious, Judge. I mean, was there any attempt, not by you, was there any attempt by Professor Hill? Did she make any attempt to reach you?
Not to my knowledge. Senator, I have had no conversations with her since, to my knowledge, November of 1991.
So when did you first hear of these allegations?
When the FBI I first heard that there had been, in a call from the White House, allegations of an unspecified nature, which needed to be, and the FBI would be sent out. That was Wednesday morning, 28th or 25th. And that I was to contact the FBI agent or the FBI and set up an appointment. I did that, and the agent came out, I think, an hour and a half or 2 hours later. The first that I heard of the nature of the allegations was when the FBI agent, after identifying himself, informed me.
At your home?
At my home.
And were you there alone meeting with him, or?
I was there alone with 2 FBI agents.
Judge, what was your reaction? I mean, when you heard this, you're saying you heard this for the first time, what was your reaction?
Senator, my reaction was initially, I was stunned. I was hurt. I was confused. I was pained. I didn't know what happened. I don't know where it came from. I didn't know what the basis of it was. I couldn't believe it. And when he said there is an allegation by Anita Hill, I think my words to him was, Anita? And then when he told me what the nature of the allegations were, I said, you can't, this, something like, you gotta be kidding. This can't be true. I can't remember. All I can tell you is it's painful.
And there was no flash of, could she have misconstrued, fill in the blank, none of that?
No. It's just, this is incredible. I can't believe it.
Have you now, I don't want to go through a repetition of them here, but have you now heard the specific charges that Professor Hill made yesterday during her 6 or 7 hours of testimony against you?
Senator, I have heard the initial charges through the FBI agent, and I've been briefed on the specific charges from yesterday that were different from the previous statements.
And Judge, what is your response to those specific charges again?
Senator, my response is that I categorically, unequivocally deny them. They did not occur.
Evidently, somebody just handed me a note, and I didn't miss this too, but you said your last contact with Professor Hill was November 1991.
90, I'm sorry, 1990.
1990. Yes.
I would have to be clairvoyant, I guess.
Well, Judge, I think that you and I may disagree on a number of things, but I think both of us would agree on one thing. Neither of us has been clairvoyant in these hearings or in this process. And I just, but you meant 1990.
1990.
Have you spoken with any of the witnesses at this hearing within the last week? Or the witnesses that are going to be at this hearing?
I don't know. You have to give me each of the witnesses, Senator. I've spoken with friends of mine who were at EEOC, and maybe some of the witnesses. I've spoken to them in the halls here. They have called to wish me well. These are people who are like family to me. These are not, these are former special assistants, I believe, and individuals who were in the inner confines of my office. And again, as I indicated, my staff and I are family.
When, do you know whether personnel from the White House have talked to witnesses who are going to appear here?
I would assume they coordinated their appearance here, Senator, so I would assume that the conversations did occur to make sure they were here, the timing, et cetera. Thank you, Judge.
My time is up, and I know Senator Hatch or Senator Biden, whoever will have time, and I'll probably come back later on.
Thank you. Senator Hatch.
Thank you, Chairman Biden. Judge, there are a lot of things that just don't make sense to me in Anita Hill's testimony. I liked her personally. I thought she presented herself well. There's no question she's a very intelligent law professor. She is graduated from one of the finest schools in the land, law schools, that is, and her undergraduate work was exemplary. She clearly is a very intelligent woman. And I think everybody who listened to her wants to like her, and many do. But, Judge, it bothers me because it just doesn't square with what I think is some of it doesn't square with what I think is common experience and just basic sense, common sense. I hesitate to do this again, but I think it's critical. And I know it outrages you, as it would me, as it would anybody who is accused of these type of activities. In her first statement on this issue, really given to the FBI and all over the press, all over the media, about 2 or 3 weeks after Thomas originally asked Hill for a date, he started talking about sex. He told her about his experiences and preferences and would ask her what she liked or if she had ever done the same thing. Hill said that he discussed oral sex between men and women. Thomas also discussed viewing films of people having sex with each other and with animals. He told her that he enjoyed watching the films and told her that she should see them. He never asked her to watch the films with him. Thomas liked to discuss specific sex acts and frequency of sex. That's allegation number 1. given in what I consider to be a pretty decent FBI investigation, pretty thorough, by a man and a woman, FBI agents. In the 4-page statement that she issued, which was, of course, leaked to the press by somebody on this committee, in violation of law, in violation of the Senate ethics, in violation of a stringent rule formulated because these FBI reports contain raw data. Information from the FBI report was released, and this statement was given. In fact, the reporter who broke the story read the statement to her according to her own remarks. She then said, in this statement, this is the second one, after brief discussion about work, he would turn the conversation to discussions about his sexual interests. His conversations were very vivid. He spoke about acts that he had seen in pornographic films involving such things as women having sex with animals and films involving group sex or rape scenes. He talked about pornographic materials depicting individuals with large penises or breasts involved in various sex acts. That's the second statement, which is considerably different from the first and adds some language in. And you've denied each and every one of these allegations last night. So I won't go through that again today, although if you want to say anything about it further, I'd be happy to have you do it. Then yesterday, she appeared before this committee, and in her statement yesterday, her written statement, of which I have a copy that was distributed to the press and everybody else, she said his conversations were very vivid. He spoke about acts that he had seen in pornographic films involving such matters as women having sex with animals and films showing group sex or rape scenes. He talked about pornographic materials depicting individuals with large penises or large breasts involved in various sex acts. On several occasions, Thomas told me graphically of his own sexual prowess. 3 different versions, each expansive, each successively expansive. Now, Judge Thomas, anybody who made all of those cumulative statements, if you take one of them out of context, they're so graphic and so crude and so outrageous, and I think so stupid, that would be enough, in my opinion, to find sex harassment against anybody, if it happened. But if you had all of those cumulatively together, the person who would do something like that over a period of time, really a short period of time according to her, and twice, not twice, but in 2 different separate agencies, we'll put it that way, that person, it seems to me, would not be a normal person. That person, it seems to me, would be a psychopathic sex fiend or a pervert. Now, Judge, you've had to have thought about this. I know you're outraged by it, and you've denied all these things, and you've said these things did not happen. They are simply untrue. Now, you've had an evening to think about it. Do you have anything further to say about it?
Senator, my reaction to this has been, over the last 2 weeks, has been one of horror. I can't tell you what I've lived through. I can't tell you what my wife has lived through or my family. I can't tell you what my son's lived through. I don't know what to tell him about this. If I were going to date someone outside of the workplace, I would certainly not approach anyone I was attempting to date as a person with this kind of grotesque language.
I have to interrupt you here, Judge, but there was an implication that you not only repetitively ask her for dates, I don't know, I guess that could be construed as sexual harassment, repetitively asking a woman for dates, but the implication was, and the clear implication which she spoke about, was that you wanted more than dates, if her allegations were true.
Senator, I did not ask her out, and I did not use that language. One of the things that has tormented me over the last 2.5 weeks has been, how do I defend myself against this kind of language and these kind of charges? How do I defend myself? That's what I asked the FBI agent, I believe, for the first time. It's what I've asked myself. How do I defend myself? If I use that kind of grotesque language with one person, it would seem to me that there would be traces of it throughout the employees who worked closely with me. There would be other individuals who heard it, or bits and pieces of it, or various levels of it.
Don't worry, Judge. Probably before the weekend's out, they'll find somebody who will say that.
Well, the difficulty also was that, from my standpoint, is that in this country, when it comes to sexual conduct, we still have underlying racial attitudes about black men and their views of sex. And once you pin that on me, I can't get it off. That is why I am so adamant in this committee about what has been done to me. I made it a point at EEOC and at education not to play into those stereotypes at all. I made it a point to have the people at those agencies, the black men, the black women, to conduct themselves in a way that was not consistent with those stereotypes. And I did the same thing myself.
When you talk in terms of stereotypes, I mean, what are you saying here? I mean, I want to understand this. First of all, let me get back to your first thought. You said that if you wanted to date somebody, or even if you wanted to seduce somebody, you didn't say that, but if somebody, just put yourself in the mind of this, if you had wanted to seduce her, is this kind of language you would use?
This would not be...
Is this kind of language a reasonable person would use? Is this kind of language anybody'd use who wanted a relationship?
Outside of the workforce or outside of the workplace, that is not certainly the way that I would approach someone I would want to date. Whether I would date that person for a long time or just go to dinner, that is not my approach. I think that, and I have to reiterate this, that for someone in the workforce to use that kind of grotesque language, it has to show up with other staff members. When we looked at sex harassment cases, when we looked at cases of people involved in unacceptable conduct of this nature, there was always a pattern. The other point that I'm making that is of great concern to me is that this is playing into a stereotype.
Before we get to that, Judge, because I am going to get to that, that's an interesting concept that you've just raised. And I promise I'll get back to it. You're a very intelligent man. There's no question about it. Anybody who watches you knows that. You couldn't have risen to these high positions in government, been confirmed 4 times by the august United States Senate, 3 times by the Labor Committee, upon which a number of us here on this committee served, and whose staff members were used in this investigation. And I might add, once now before the Judiciary Committee, august committees. She is an extremely intelligent woman. And from all appearances, a lovely human being. Do you think an intelligent African-American male like you, or any other intelligent male, regardless of race, would use this kind of language to try to start a relationship with an intelligent, attractive woman?
Senator, I don't know anyone who would try to establish a relationship with that kind of language.
Unless they were sick.
I don't know of anyone.
I don't even know people who might have emotional disturbances who would try that. Now, I want to ask you about this intriguing thing you just said. You said some of this language Stereotype language?
Senator,
what does that mean? I don't understand.
Language throughout the history of this country, and certainly throughout my life, language about the sexual prowess of black men, language about the sex organs of black men and the sizes, etc. That kind of language has been used about black men as long as I've been on the face of this earth. And these are charges that play into racist, bigoted stereotypes. And these are the kind of charges that are impossible to wash off. And these are the kind of stereotypes that I have in my tenure in government and conduct of my affairs, attempted to move away from and to convince people that we should conduct ourselves in a way that defies these stereotypes. But when you play into a stereotype, it's as though you're skiing downhill. There's no way to stop it. And this plays into the most bigoted, racist stereotypes that any black man will face.
Well, I didn't understand the television program, but there were two black men. I may have it wrong, but as I recall, there were two black men talking about this matter, and one of them said, "She's trying to demonize us." I didn't understand it at the time. Do you understand that?
Well, I understand it, and any black man in this country. Senator, in the 1970s, I became very interested in the issue of lynching. And if you want to track through this country in the 19th and 20th century, the lynchings of black men, you will see that there is invariably, or in many instances, a relationship with sex. An accusation that that person cannot shake off. That is the point that I'm trying to make, and that is the point that I was making last night, that this is high-tech lynching. I cannot shake off these accusations because they play to the worst stereotypes we have about black men in this country.
Oh. Well, this bothers me. Bothers me. I can see why. Let me. I hate to do this, but let me ask you some tough questions. You've talked about stereotypes used against black males in this society. In this first statement, he told her about his experiences and preferences, would ask her what she liked or if she had ever done the same thing. Is that a black stereotype?
No.
Okay. Hill said that he discussed oral sex between men and women. Is that a black stereotype?
No.
Okay. Thomas also discussed viewing films of people having sex with each other and with animals. What about that?
That's not a stereotype about blacks.
Okay. He told her that he enjoyed watching the films and told her that she should see them. Is watching X-rated films or pornographic films, is that a stereotype?
No.
He never asked her to watch the films with him. Thomas liked to discuss specific sex acts and frequency of sex.
No, I don't think so. I think the last frequency could have to do with black men supposedly being very promiscuous or something like that.
So it could be partially stereotypical then.
Yeah.
In the next statement, she said his conversations were very vivid. He spoke about acts that he had seen in pornographic films involving such things as women having sex with animals, and films involving group sex or rape scenes. He talked about pornographic materials depicting individuals with large penises or breasts involved in various sex acts. What about those things?
I think certainly the size of sexual organs would be something.
Well, I'm concerned. Thomas told me graphically of his own sexual prowess, the third statement.
That's
Clearly a black
stereotypical.
stereotype. Clearly.
Stereotypical.
A black stereotype.
Clearly.
'Cause Do you think? Well, what do you feel about that?
Senator, as I've said before, this whole affair has been anguish for me. I feel as though I've been abused in this process, as I said last night, and I continue to feel that way. I feel as though something has been lodged against me and painted on me and will leave an indelible mark on me. This is something that not only supports but plays into the worst stereotypes about black men in this society. And I have no way of changing it and no way of refuting these charges.
Now, let me just... People hearing yesterday's testimony are probably wondering, how could this quiet, retired woman know about something like Long Dong Silver? Did you tell her that?
No, I don't know how she knows.
Is that a black stereotype? Something like Long Dong Silver?
To the extent, Senator, that it is a reference to one's sexual organs and the size of one's sexual organs, I think it is.
There's an interesting case that I found called Carter versus Sedgwick County, Kansas, 1988 case, dated September 30th. It's a 10th Circuit Court of Appeals case. It's a district court case. It's a district court case within the 10th Circuit. Do you know which circuit Oklahoma is in?
My guess would be the 10th Circuit. I remember serving on a moot court panel with a judge from the 10th Circuit, and I believe she was from Tulsa.
Well, I have to tell you something. I believe Oklahoma is in the 10th Circuit. Utah is also. It's an interesting case. I'm just going to read one paragraph if anybody wants to read it. And I apologize in advance for some of the language. I really do. It's a civil rights case. Interesting civil rights case. And again, I apologize in advance for the language. I just want to read one paragraph. Plaintiff testified that during the course of her employment, she was subjected to numerous racial... By the way, this is an extremely interesting case because the head note says black female brought suit against county and county officials contending she suffered sexual harassment and was unlawfully terminated from her employment with county on the basis of her race and sex. Now, anybody wants it, we'll make copies for you. Or you can get it. I'll give the citation, as a matter of fact. It's the citation is 705 F Sup 1474, District Court, Kansas, 1988. Let me just read the one paragraph. Plaintiff testified that during the course of her employment, she was subjected to numerous racial slurs and epithets at the hands of defendant Brand and was sexually harassed by defendant Cameron, specifically as to plaintiff's claim of race discrimination. Plaintiff testified that defendant Brand referred to plaintiff on several occasions as John's, Jon''S, in brackets Cameron, close friends, token, I apologize for this word, but it's in here, nigger. That's certainly racist. And at other times would tell plaintiff it was nigger pick day, in quotes. Plaintiff claims defendant Brand kept a picture of a black family in his office, and when plaintiff questioned Brand about the picture, he boasted of his own, and then the word is used again, blood, and of his sexual conquests of black, and I'm not going to say that word. It's a pejorative term. It's a disgusting term.